Hello. Welcome to the HooperCast. I'm not George Takei. Did you see, by the way, George Takei, was in the news as like he was talking shit about oh crap. Well, this is a great story so far. He basically was talking smack about Clarence Thomas, the Supreme Court justice. Mm-hmm. He called him a clown in blackface.
Wow.
And then later he was just like, I'm sorry. While I continue to disagree with Justice Thomas, I didn't think through the words I chose. George is usually so savvy on social media. And
he's usually pretty even-keeled.
He had too many apple teenies and decided to lash out.
I guess so.
Clown and blackface.
Yeah.
There are black clowns. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
I've never met a black clown, though.
I have.
You have?
Yeah.
Where'd you meet a black clown, Dustin?
At the carnival. At the fair.
Now, could you tell he was black because his face paint was poorly applied? Was it his voice?
Well, I mean, you only put face paint on your face, so therefore the neck and the arms
and the hands. Were the children confused?
I mean, I don't think so. There was just a clown. I don't know. I didn't interview the children. Excuse me, children. I'm here live on the scene from the HooperCast. Can you tell me what you're feeling at this exact moment?
The HooperCast News Network. HNN. All right. Hey, everybody. This is our 85th episode. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
Yeah. 85, like Back to the Future.
Oh, snap.
Oh, it's another time we've referenced that film recently. By the way, I'm watching all three of them with my mom at some point this year, and we're going to try to watch the second one around October. Yeah. Because I feel like that'll be real surreal, you know? Like, oh my God, this is supposed to be happening right now. Like, look at this
Where's
floor and this couch.
My flying cars?
Look at my clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, we're here today to talk about some stuff we've seen. Sorry we were off last week. We were being patriotic and deciding not to work. So that's what's been going on. That's
our prerogative. So shut up about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Dustin, what did you see? You saw. Fine. Just talk, Dustin.
Okay. Thank you for that wonderful intro, Hooper.
This is like Radio Space Jam, where they came down and they just. Yes. They just took all my hosting talent. They just siphoned it out of me. I'm just going like, so I'm on the radio now.
Welcome, I guess, to...
Hold on. I got to take hold on, my phone's ringing.
Whatever the show's name is.
Meanwhile, the Monstars, they all look like Casey Kasem and Larry King and like Ryan Seacrest.
Oh, wow.
Orson Welles. All right, go ahead.
So I guess we'll start with TV. I just finished Parenthood, which, for those of you who do not know, ended its 6-season run in January of this year. I did not start it until, I don't know, a few months ago. The first 5 seasons are on Netflix. The final season is complete on Hulu. So I was able to finish it between the two services and kind of binge watched my way through it. There's like 100 and something episodes of this show, which is way more than I thought I was signing on for, because when I saw it on Netflix, I just saw the 5 seasons and I was like, that's the whole show.
How many episodes?
Like 104 or something like that.
Oh my God.
And I thought like, okay, the final season was like, I don't know, 15 episodes or something like that. And anyway, that wasn't included in the total on Netflix. And I just figured it was like, I don't know, a sitcom or something. And I thought they were going to be like 30 minutes. Anyway, nevertheless, I obviously didn't know anything about this going in. And so anyway, I bit off more than I could chew. And I just kind of had to get through it. But it's not a bad show. For those of you who are looking for something to kind of binge watch or something just to have on, this is an interesting show because of a few reasons. Number one, it's executive produced by Jason Katims, who also executive produced on Friday Night Lights. So if you're a fan of Friday Night Lights, you will probably find something to latch onto here, because it's very similar in its sensibilities and in its like reverence to the traditional family structure, or to, you know, the way that modern families in America behave. So you'll probably latch on to something like that. Then there's also this idea of parenthood, which I guess is sort of the burning question of the show, right? So in school, Hooper, you remember the whole burning question, you know, session that I think McCary had us go through, which was...
Oh, I thought he was talking about burning doobies.
Well, that too.
Oh.
but the burning question is this idea of, what is the question that the audience continually asks that keeps them interested in the show? So something like Breaking Bad has a built-in burning question from like episode 1, which is, you know, the cancer, and then of course the meth, and how far will this guy go?
Yeah, how far is Walt going to take this? Yeah,
how bad is he going to break? So these burning questions kind of act to keep you hooked into the show. And they're really important to have. But Parenthood doesn't really have a burning question. So let me lay out the premise for you, and you'll see what I mean. The premise of the show is basically we have two parents. We have their grandparents, and they have 4 children, and each of their children now have a family, or are in the process of, you know, creating a family. So it is the way in which all of these 4 families plus the grandparents interact with one another and bounce off each other, support one another, criticize one another, and just their you know, intermingling. So each family has its sort of own fair share of problems. So the grandparents, you know, their marriage is a little bit rocky towards the beginning. They're having some financial issues. What I would consider probably the main family is their oldest son, Adam, and his wife, Christina, and they have 2 children. One is in high school and the other is in elementary school, and their youngest child is diagnosed with Asperger's. So that becomes sort of their through line, is dealing with the Asperger's and dealing with raising that child with special needs. Then, of course, there is the oldest sister, who is played by Lauren Graham, and she is a single mother raising 2 high school age kids, and then she loses her job and moves back home to live with her parents, and just sort of, you know, her kids having to deal with the move and you know, new schools and all that kind of stuff. Then there is the third child, who is played by Dax Shepard. Who I've never liked Dax Shepard, but I feel like this is sort of a role that he was meant to play. He's kind of, you know, the goofy, lazy, I don't know, irresponsible kind of a guy who over the course of the series kind of learns what responsibility is. And so anyway, you have him, a former one-night stand of his shows up with, I believe, in like a 5 or 6-year-old son, and is like, "This is yours. Help me raise him.
Here you go.
You need to know him." And so you have this sprung on him, and then you have the youngest child, who seems to have like the perfect kind of marriage. She has a supportive husband who's a stay-at-home dad, allowing her to spend all of her time at work. She's a lawyer, and then they also have a daughter. And all of these families play off of each other really well, and you grow to care for all of them. But there is no real burning question other than just, okay, in this episode, here's an issue that they have to deal with, like bullying or, you know, whatever it may be. And while there's certain questions like you can see the progress that someone like Dax Shepard is making in becoming responsible, and how serious he's taking the prospect of now being a father. Mm-hmm. there's nothing really that's like a question. It's just kind of like a tune in every week and see what happens kind of a show. So it's really weird that I would even be hooked on a show like this because there's not really a reason for the hook. There's a gradual, realistic-y kind of a character arc for these characters, some of which I think the most pronounced is Dax Shepard's, and everyone else is just kind of like, okay, this comes into our lives, now let's deal with it. Or this happens, now let's deal with this. And so they're miniature character arcs, in a sense. So there's nothing that's really going to carry you through the series other than the word parenthood. How do they deal with all of these individual situations? So it's a little weird in that sense, but because you never really kind of know what you're going to get. Maybe this episode is going to deal with racial prejudice, or this episode is going to deal with whatever. So I don't want to say scattered, but there's a lot to keep track of. And so what I would sort of warn people of is that it's going to take at least probably 10 episodes for you to start getting the hang of these people. It's a little like Friday Night Lights in that sense. One of the things I said about Friday Night Lights is once you get to know the characters, you'll start enjoying the show better. But it takes a while to get to know them because there's so many to get to know.
Yeah.
And it's the same here. Craig T. Nelson's character becomes more nuanced as the show goes on. Now, whether that's because of his performance, because of the writers, or because I get to know him more the more time I get to spend with him, or because if it's all three, I'm not sure which one. But you do get to grow and care for these characters in different ways. Anyway, long story short, it is a show that I would recommend, but be warned that it's long and it's not the easiest show to watch because it's one of those shows where characters make choices that you would not make. Characters make choices that are stupid, and these characters make mistakes, and it's a little soap opera-y, I guess, in that way, but they make choices that are going to affect their lives going forward. And you, as this third party, can see that is not the right choice or whatever. And so sometimes it becomes difficult to watch. Like, why are you, hiding this thing from your parents? Or why are you, doing this thing that's making your wife miserable? And these little things make it difficult to sit through. So for me, binge watching it, there were times when I was just sort of ready for the show to be over because I wanted to get to a tone that wasn't so like, oh, good God, like your wife is unhappy, like deal with it, But nevertheless, if you're into something like this that is realistic, it's something that pretty much everyone's going to have to go through, in one way or another. If you're going to be a parent, or if you are a parent, or if you have parents, you go through these things. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting show that feels like these characters could be real. And for Friday Night Lights fans, you're treated to a lot of Friday Night Lights alums that come over and play roles in this show, like Minka Kelly or Michael B. Jordan, and you'll be treated to that on various occasions, and that's always fun. So anyway, I would recommend it if you're interested in the subject matter of parenthood, or in just watching characters interact and seeing something that feels more character driven than it does story driven. Because like I said, these characters do make choices, and those choices will affect the next episode. So for those reasons, I would say it's a good show. And it's pretty well performed as well. I mean, it was a show on NBC, and network television isn't necessarily known for its groundbreaking performances, but every now and then one gets through. But this really does have some great performances in it. Craig T. Nelson is always funny. Ray Romano comes in for the last 2 or 3 seasons as a regular, and he does a great job. I mean, I did not expect him to be as good as he was at balancing drama and comedy. And then also, I want to give a special mention to the actor Max Burkholder, who plays the character of Max in the show, who is the kid with Asperger's. He does a phenomenal job of getting it down to like mannerisms, eye blinks, and just everything. I mean, he plays this character so well. And for, I don't know how old he was when we started, like 11 or something. For an 11-year-old kid to be putting out a performance like that is remarkable. Like, I had to look it up to see if he actually had Asperger's because I believed it. And he does not. If you're interested in a good child performer, that guy...
He does have Asperger's syndrome.
What, he does?
Yeah.
Who does?
Max Burkholder.
No, he doesn't.
No. Sorry.
His character,
as Max Braverman, who has Asperger's.
Correct.
I speed read that sentence. And
I was like, I think I read this. No, but yeah, Max Burkholder does not. And for him to play it so well at that young of an age, if you've ever known anybody with Asperger's or autism, it's such a believable performance. And it really is like the fact that he didn't get an Emmy at all is ridiculous to me because he knocked it out of the park.
Wow, no Emmys, just a young artist award.
Yeah, I mean, if you put it into perspective, that guy is putting out at 11 years old, this time or however old he was, this time where most kids like can't stop looking at the camera or, have this smile on their face that's like, oh, I'm on screen or whatever. This guy's putting out a quality of work that you would expect that's hard for adults to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a reason we still talk about Dustin Hoffman and Rain Man. It's because that's a hard thing to pull off, and he pulled it off there. So for this guy to pull it off here at that age is remarkable, and I hope he goes on to have a very long and diverse career.
It's kind of like doing an impression. Like it's impressive if you can do a caricature of someone, like everyone will laugh. But
sure.
The true mark of if you like, particularly for voice actors, of if you can do an impression is can you read like a nursery rhyme in that voice or something? Can you ad lib in that voice? I mean, you can't just be like, hey, do James Brown. You just go, hey, like that's not James Brown. That's just
screaming.
That's just screaming.
Right.
So it's the same with anyone who has any kind of, disability or impairment with acting. It's just like you can't just go. They really nailed it in Tropic Thunder, like with the whole full retard thing. Not that this is the same thing, but like you can't just. You border on offensive if you just cartoon it up. You really have to study it and try and be accurate with it, and it's probably more subtle than people who don't have it think,
Right. And part of this too is, I believe I read this right. I think it's Jason Katims who does have a son with Asperger's. So I'm sure that kind of helps in the writing process and just sort of overseeing the general direction of that character as realistic. But I mean, even still, I mean, you got to give the actor props for bringing it to life. And I've met people with Asperger's and I can see it. Like, I had to look it up. You know what I mean? It's just crazy to me. So,
right.
Yeah.
Speaking of TV, I am caught up on Veep on HBO. It has 4 seasons on HBO so far. The 4th season wrapped, like maybe 3-4 weeks ago, same time Game of Thrones wrapped. So I finally caught up, and I have such a big catalog of shows I'm watching right now. So Veep is it fits this little slot in my list, which is this half-hour category that I typically can watch in smaller spurts, or like when I get home before I go to sleep, right? So I don't really chip away at it to a certain degree. So I finally caught up. If you haven't watched Veep, it stars Julia Louis-Dreyfus. You will know her. You probably know her as Elaine Bennis from Seinfeld, or what's her face, the New Adventures of Old Christine, and now she's this. So everyone probably knows who this woman is. Julia Louis-Dreyfus is an extremely talented comedic actress, and clearly has a large body of work that is popular. Like, think about all the actors, by the way. who you don't even think about. Like, you think about them like later, and you're like, oh, where are they now? I haven't heard. What's Steven Dorff doing? Haven't heard from him since Blade. And then you realize, like, oh, he's been doing movies just kind of under the radar, but he's been working. Think of all, like, the hundreds of actors who are working and paying mortgages that we don't even think about these days. This is a woman who's had 3 hit television series.
Yeah, like back to back. Yeah.
Like, that's pretty, and that's to the viewer, it's nothing, because it's just like, hey, give me episodes. But when you think about what kind of an actress that takes to really make that successful, it's a good show is a great mix of writing and acting and even the executive producers, the creative, the big creative people, everyone, and the network. It just sort of falls into place. It really is kind of this stroke of luck when you mix the right people together.
Yeah.
So Veep is that. It's about Julia Louis-Dreyfus plays Selena Meyer. She's the vice president of the United States, former senator from Maryland, and the first couple seasons are basically her whole thing is she feels kind of castrated in her role as Veep. Like, no one takes her seriously. Her relationship with the president is pretty strained, and you never ever see the president. Like, he always has just left the room, or like they don't cast the president. He's not. He's kind of he's like the parents in Peanuts.
Yeah.
So the show
his
surrounds
presence
her.
Is felt, but he's not there.
His presence is felt, but there really is no reason to cast him.
Sure.
So it's just. So she really wants to be president, and so it's one of those shows it's a much lighter version of House of Cards. Where it's just like, this is purely like a workplace comedy, basically. But the workplace is the White House or the vice president's office, and she's got a great cast surrounding her. Dustin, you would know Tony Hale, probably the best of all these people, from Arrested Development.
Yeah.
So Tony Hale is he's wonderful as this bagman character who is obsessed with Selena and is secretly like in love with her, and so he's too dedicated to his job. You got Anna Chlumsky, Reed Scott, Timothy Simons as Jonah Ryan, this big lumbering, I'd go through the whole. They all deserve recognition, but you'd recognize a lot of these actors. Kevin Dunn, off the top of the head, he's the dad from Transformers. Gary Cole. You know all these people, and you've got a ton of recurring characters all throughout this show. It's a great show. It's tightly written. There's joke after joke after joke. There's never any of those situations that you were talking about with Parenthood, and that I find myself with older television shows. And, like Friday Night Lights, where you have characters doing things that are very clearly dumb and are frustrating to watch.
Right.
Like, no one does anything in the show where you're like, oh, God, why'd you do that? Because it's a comedy. Like, no one...
Sure, yeah.
There's none of that. It's purely light to watch, and it's not a chore. And, there's 40 episodes, so it doesn't take a long time to get through.
Right.
I'd recommend
Are they half-hour episodes?
Yeah, they're half-hour.
Okay.
And it's just fun to watch. It's just the writing's really, the jokes, every joke hits, and all the characters really, really shine. And so I think it's good. It's just a great comedy show. Awesome. So I finally caught up. That was one of those shows. The reason I haven't kept up with it at the time was because I didn't have HBO for a while, and I was trying to watch too many TV shows, and I fell behind. So That's the reason that I'm so behind on this show, not because it wasn't worth my time. It's a great show, and people should check it out if they haven't. And if you are watching it, then I hope you're enjoying it. They've been renewed for a 5th season. I know they're swapping showrunners. The one dude's stepping down for like personal reasons, so I don't know. But good show.
Well, here's another piece of trivia for you, Hooper.
Oh, yeah?
Julia Louis-Dreyfus was also on Arrested Development. She had like a 3 or 5 episode arc.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, look at that.
So there you go.
Let's get into movies.
Okay.
You know what? Let me talk about mine real quick, Dustin, and then we
Go
can
ahead.
get into the big one. A quick little HooperCast book segment. I finally read the Steve Jobs biography. I almost said autobiography. Impossible. So it's this big book. It came out, I think, the same year he died, or like right after he died, pretty soon after he died. Right. And it's by Walter Isaacson, and it's a great book. So I recommend you read that and not watch Jobs, which is the film. I was going to say based on the book. It's actually not based on the book.
Really?
The one that's coming out, the Aaron Sorkin, Danny Boyle one, is the one that actually was optioned from the book.
Ah.
This Ashton Kutcher one, it was just
based on what the screenwriter read on Wikipedia.
Yeah, the screenwriter must have read the manuscript or something and was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna, but it's actually not the one. Like, you won't see in the credits based on Walter Isaacson's book, Steve Jobs. That's why that's why the new one is called Steve Jobs, and this one is just Jobs. Yeah. So, long story short, this film is not good, and I don't know if it's because I also read the book, but it really just doesn't do him justice. Whether you've read the book or not, it is no doubt that Steve Jobs, his story deserves certain. Steve was very detail oriented. He was obsessive about details, but he also knew how to market stuff. He was this rare figure in business where not only was he savvy enough to navigate deals and negotiations, but he also had the creative vision. He was this kind of anomaly at the time, where he had this, what they kept calling this reality distortion field. He had this way of being able to talk to people and get them to do things. It was this sort of soft manipulation, and so he would push people to do better and push people to their limits who worked for him. And he'd only stack his team, even from the early days of Apple. He only wanted people who had an A game. He didn't want B players, C players. He only wanted A's, not even B pluses. He was committed to putting out a good product. So for them to make a film that skims over details of his life seems disingenuous to Steve and just to the viewer. While I understand that it's tough to really make a film about someone's life in 2 hours, but I feel like, one, he's miscast. I feel like they just cast Ashton Kutcher because he looks kind of like Steve. Like, in certain photographs, he looks kind of like him as a younger man.
Sure.
There's a reason why the cover of this movie is like this, this real contrast-pushed, neon-looking picture of Kutcher's Jobs. Because if you just look at him without all that stuff in front of him, just with the gray beard, whatever, he really doesn't look like him. He does not.
Yeah.
Even if in most times you look at a photograph of Steve Jobs, you're like, this doesn't look like Ashton Kutcher at all. So I feel like they cast him simply off of looks, which is always a bad idea.
Yeah.
His performance wasn't really that good. They skimmed past what is probably the most critical part of Steve's life, which is after he was booted out of Apple and he went and he started Next, and then he the whole Pixar stuff.
Yeah.
That's like less than 30 seconds in the movie, and it's alluded to in newsreel, basically.
Really?
And it's like, this is the part of his life where he had time away from Apple, and he sort of just did other stuff, and through all that, people started noticing he was a little different. Like he was more patient, or he was more this or whatever. So he goes from basically being like this control freak asshole. And then just they flash forward a few years, and now he's just better all of a sudden. He comes back to Apple, and he's calmer. And then he puts out, the iPod, and then that's it. And you're like, okay, so you just showed me an overnight change, basically, and way too much time on his early life, tripping acid and and stuff like that. And so I couldn't shake the whole time. I mean, it's the same time period, same haircut. And then you have got Michael Kelso, and it's basically just like, what if Michael Kelso started Apple? Yeah. It really, I hate to say it because it sounds like a dumb clickbait headline. That's really what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
There's an episode of that 70s show where Kelso is so good at Pong that he's bored. He's like, you know what? I'm going to make the paddles smaller. So he rips up the Atari, and then Red comes in and finds him working on it. And he's like, that's my Atari. And he's like, look, I'm trying to make the paddles smaller. And so Red gets intrigued, so they start working on it together. And you find out that Kelso is actually very book smart, and he's talking about the secondary circuit board with the soldering iron, and Red's like, oh, wow, like, you actually know a lot. And it's like, take that scene and just throw it into
movie.
the first scene of this movie, and it's seamless, basically.
Yeah.
And just pretend they're calling him Kelso, not Steve, the whole time.
Right,
and
sure.
So don't watch Jobs. Read the book, or possibly watch the movie coming up. Did you see the trailer for this movie, Dustin?
I did.
I think Fassbender probably looks more like Steve Jobs than Ashton Kutcher. Maybe, okay. But even if he does, he's a better actor.
He's a better actor by far.
I mean, the director, I don't even know who directed this film. I don't care. I don't know who wrote it. I don't care. I didn't recognize their names. But this is a Danny Boyle film coming up, and it's an Aaron Sorkin script. And I can tell you from watching the newsroom that while Aaron Sorkin is real up his own ass, and he's real, his script is just covered in, I'm a hero, I'm a hero, I'm a hero. But at least his work is interesting to watch.
Right.
I'm not bored. I'm not checking my watch. It doesn't take me 5 days. 5 days, Dustin. 5 separate sittings to watch this film.
You're a more patient man than I.
Remember every time I would call you, I'd be like, I think I'm about the 50-minute mark now of this movie.
Exactly. Oof.
So I don't know if this next Steve Jobs movie is going to be good, but I do know that it can't be worse than this. And I just, with the people involved, not to mention it's based on the actual book. Steve Wozniak came out and said, I'm actually throwing my support behind this new one and not the other one. The other one was the first draft. They said the first 4 or 5 drafts was atrocious, and then they finally got it to decent kind of. But everyone, Wozniak just said him and the other people would watch it and just sort of laugh. It's weird how they picture Daniel looking with this motorcycle. It wasn't the kind of guy he was at all. But I don't know why do they have him driving up on a motorcycle with sunglasses and long hair? He's weird. He had a crew cut, just stuff like that. So I just feel like the people who are making this next one, if at the very least they don't really care about the story, they're more talented at making movies.
Yeah.
So I'm just more optimistic about that. So.
Well, there you go.
I love Aaron Sorkin. I like watching his stuff. I just don't like him very much.
Yeah, sure. No, I agree. But his screenplays are always phenomenal.
They're interesting.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get into the main topic, which is Terminator Genisys. This is the 5th film in the Terminator franchise.
Yes.
What I can't say anything more. I didn't see it. Dustin saw it. So, I'm going to kick it over to you, Dustin. So,
well, first, let's talk about a little prediction that we had made.
Oh, yeah. What episode was that? 66?
Yeah, something like that.
It was at the beginning of the year. It was in January.
Yeah, so go ahead and set this up for us, Hooper.
Okay, so when we did the looking ahead in 2015, I noticed when putting that together that I should probably keep track of things like things we predict, because it helps me establish, how good we are at guessing things.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be fun for the listeners to remind, stuff like that. So anyway, when we were talking about Magic Mike XXL and Terminator Genisys, because they both opened over the weekend, I had said that I thought that Terminator would destroy Magic Mike in the box office. I might insert the clip. I don't know. Dustin and John had both remarked that we'll probably beat it, but not by much. I'm just going to play the clip. So, for July, I've got Magic Mike XXL. I'm mentioning this because I saw the first one, although I know nothing about this next one, so who knows how good it actually is.
It's not Channing Tatum wrote the screenplay.
Yes. Yes. And it's not the same director, so this could be horrible. And frankly, on paper, it's a terrible idea to me. But we'll see. I just thought that was worth mentioning. But it's going to get destroyed because it's going up against Terminator Genisys.
I don't know if it's going to get destroyed, man.
I don't either, yeah.
It's going to be a tight race. Oh, yeah.
I don't think so. I think people are going to see Terminator out the wazoo.
Terminator's not what it was.
It's not.
Yeah, but the general public doesn't know that.
Maybe.
I don't know. I know way more people that'll see the Terminator than they'll see Magic Mike.
I mean, I would see Terminator over Magic Mike. I haven't seen the first Magic Mike, but I don't know that everybody's going to do the same thing, because you realize, like, if all the guys go see Terminator, all the women are going to go see Magic Mike. and women are more likely to just go out that weekend and see Magic Mike, and dudes are more likely to just say, well, I'll see Terminator when I can.
Yeah, I think it'll outperform Magic Mike. I do.
It's possible.
Magic Mike.
I think it's going to.
I think it'll outperform it, but it'll be close.
Magic
it'll
Mike
be
was a small movie. It didn't rake in that much at the box office. I don't think. I mean, it made a profit, but I don't think it did gangbusters.
Here's what I'll say about the box office race. I just looked it up really quick. Opening weekend of Magic Mike, the first one, was $39 million. Opening weekend of Terminator Salvation was $42 million. So it's going to be close. Plus, Magic Mike is going to get the bump from having a successful first film, whereas Terminator Salvation wasn't generally well received, and it's been so long.
So I'm looking at Box Office Mojo, and there's several things interesting. One is that I was actually right, because every time I'd listen to that episode, I was like, God, they're probably right. Terminator Genisys more than doubled the gross of Magic Mike. It $27 million, and Magic Mike was at 12. And today, they're at the time of this recording, Terminator's at 42 million, and Magic Mike is at 27 million. What's even more interesting about this is that Terminator is not number one at the box office. Yep. It still made less money than Jurassic World on its fourth week, and it made 29 million. And $500 million less than Inside Out on its third week. So both of these films didn't crack the top two.
Right.
I'd just like to point out.
I think the general argument or debate rather, was which one would win, because we were both in agreement that Terminator would beat Magic Mike, but the question was by how much, and like you said, it's 27 million to 12 million on its opening weekend. So Hooper, technically, you were right.
I should probably point out it was probably in 400. It looks like it was in about 400 more theaters. Yeah, across but that doesn't account for for double the gross.
Right, exactly. I don't know that I would say it destroyed it, but it definitely more than doubled it. I mean, it did kind of wipe the floor with it a little bit, but I do think that we had all underestimated the staying power of Inside Out and Jurassic World. Yeah. Especially Jurassic World.
Well, and the Terminator brand.
Right, yeah, and maybe we overestimated the Terminator brand. But let's jump into the review. Yeah. So, Terminator Genisys is directed by Alan Taylor, who previously had done Thor: The Dark World. And it stars... Do what?
And he was a Game of Thrones director too.
Yes, correct. Before that. And so this stars Emilia Clarke, Jason Clarke, and Jai Courtney, as well as Arnold Schwarzenegger, who gets top billing, of course. And I think his name appears before the title in the film. Wow. Anyway, so Terminator Genisys. Let me set it up this way. If you remember the original Terminator, the year was 2029, and the human resistance had defeated Skynet, finally. But Skynet had a last-ditch effort, which was to send back in time a T-800 to kill Sarah Connor before her son, John Connor, who leads the resistance, would defeat them, thereby ensuring that they don't get defeated, even though they were. So this film starts there. It starts with that assault on Skynet. And what we see is Skynet activate this, emergency, in case of emergency break glass kind of plan, where they drop young Arnold Schwarzenegger into a time displacement thing, the time machine, and he goes back to 1984. So thus, what we're doing is watching what led up to the original film, but was in the future. And so, basically Arnold goes back, and then we see the discussion that John has with his men, and Kyle Reese, played by Jai Courtney, decides to go back in time after the T-800 to destroy it and to protect Sarah Connor. So So all of this happens just as one would expect, but there's a twist. As Jai Courtney, or I'll call him Kyle Reese, as Kyle Reese is in the machine being sent back in time, he watches as something, perhaps a new Terminator, played by Matt Smith, of Doctor Who fame, Hooper. Presumably kills John Connor. Matt Smith had infiltrated the ranks of the Resistance, and
as he's
Kyle Reese is going back in time.
Jesus.
So as Kyle is being sent back, his memories start changing, and he now has these memories of a life before Judgment Day, even though he was born after Judgment Day. So Kyle never knew a world that wasn't at war, and now all of a sudden he's getting these memories of being like, a young teenager and, I don't know, maybe 12 or 13, and having like a nice birthday party with his still living parents and, all of this stuff that never happened. So when he arrives in 1984, the events play out very similarly to the original Terminator, down to, I think they used some of the footage from the original.
Oh, wow.
And just sort of like repurposed it and maybe like, chopped up and, put it against new backdrops or whatever. Anyway, they've mimicked shots and sets and everything to the original. But there's a twist. The timeline, because of the death of John Connor, has been changed. And what we see is when young Arnold Schwarzenegger shows up in 1984, just like in the original, he approaches some miscreants to steal their clothes. But this time, current Arnold Schwarzenegger shows up to defeat the young Arnold Schwarzenegger. Mm-hmm. And this is when we start seeing that the world is a very different place now. And this is not the James Cameron flick that we all love so much. If you're interested in seeing this film, avoid the marketing because it spoils a lot. Like, after seeing the film, I can now say that if you see the marketing, you've seen the film.
In fact, when it did spoil the very main thing, part of this plot, that's when I decided, not only do I now know what happens, but I'm not a fan of it, so I'm definitely not going to see this movie.
Right, exactly. I'll say this. It plays a little better, in the movie, like in context, but just, I believe probably we're on the same page that just by its concept, I don't like the idea.
Are we on the same page that we don't like Jason Clarke?
I don't mind him, but in this, he just kind of is there chewing scenery. Like Zero Dark 30, he was fine. But yeah,
Rise or Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, he was good.
Yeah, he was fine in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. So I don't mind him.
Down.
But he's a little boring, which is what I'll say about pretty much everybody in the film, except for Arnold and J.K. Simmons, who doesn't have much to do and pretty much doesn't serve a purpose. But yeah, I mean, both of the Clarks and Jai Courtney are pretty boring in the film, and yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so the timeline is different. Things are changing. Essentially, here's sort of my thoughts, and I'm going to try to keep this pretty spoiler free. Okay. My thoughts are, they said, it's like the writers sat around and said, what did we like about the first movie? And they said, we liked the romance between Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese. And they said, okay, we'll do that again. And then they said, what do we like about the second film? And they said, we liked the relationship between the Terminator and Edward Furlong. And then they're like, all right, we're going to do that again. And they're like, okay, but yeah, Edward Furlong's like weird now. And they're like, all right, cool. We'll just make it with his relationship with Sarah Connor instead of John. And so that's the change. But so here's, I guess, sort of the idea is that the film doesn't do anything different, right? We know the fate of Sarah and Kyle. We know really, essentially, the movie doesn't do anything you don't expect with the relationship between Sarah and her, guardian, T-800, just like, I mean, it basically mirrors what happens with John Connor and his Guardian T-800 in Terminator 2. So they've copied and like stolen these ideas that worked in their proper settings and in their proper films and put them all in this, which it didn't need all of that. And on top of that, we've seen it. Like, show me something new and something different. And then they've got, of course, a new sort of Terminator that they have to fight, which I'm getting a little sick of, to be honest. Like, you know, essentially the movie becomes a superhero movie. If you think back to the original was Sarah Connor, a normal waitress, against an unstoppable machine. Yeah. And that was a compelling, you know, idea. And then the idea of the second one was compelling because it was, here's a machine who's up against its like upgraded, you know, version. It's like an original iPod against an iPod Touch. And then every film after that has been, let's just get two robots to fight and use their superpowers, whatever they happen to be, against one another. And
let's watch neither of them die, because they won't.
Right, and they can't hurt each other.
It's like every fight in the Wolverine versus Sabretooth is the same thing. It's like, you're both immortal, so stop wasting my time.
Exactly. No, that's exactly right. And that's the problem a lot of people had with Man of Steel, was that, okay, well, Superman and Zod are both punching each other, but they don't seem to ever be being hurt by each other.
That would have been hilarious in Man of Steel if he just punched Zod in the head and Zod just collapses dead. Like, oh, yeah. All right, cool.
Oh, wow, that worked really well.
Oh, good.
But yeah, I mean, you know, here's the biggest thing about this film. It doesn't do anything that I think is too offensively stupid, but it also doesn't do anything smart, and it doesn't show us anything new, and it only confuses the timeline and sets up things that are like, there's going to be a sequel, we'll deal with this in the sequel, which I'll go ahead and spoil. One of them is Sarah Connor's Guardian T-800, Arnold, throughout this film. We don't know who sent him back in time to be her guardian, and all the memories are erased, and we never find out in the film. Thus, by, you know, setting up a sequel where they can be like, "Oh, you said it yourself for the future," or whatever. You know, they can say whatever they want.
That's real lazy too, because I guarantee you they don't know.
No, they don't know. They'll just figure out when they get there. So, you know, they set up some stuff in the future. The timeline's all messed up. I guess the biggest problem with the film is that it's boring, is that you don't care. And how many times can I watch Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese fall in love with each other when I don't like Jai Courtney and Emilia Clarke is boring? So what, you know what I mean? Like, this is a lesser version of something I've already seen. Why do I care? Like, I
don't want to watch two people who just met like do like a meet cute in the middle of an action movie, especially when they know that they're supposed to fall in love. So then it's just like, okay, so never going to watch all the awkwardness around it. Like they're like, I assume they treated it in some way, sort of like they were set up by friends or something.
Yeah, I mean,
in a certain way, like,
the thing is, Kyle doesn't know that he's going back in time to be Sarah's
to impregnate her.
Right, exactly. He just is going back in time to save her, just like Michael Biehn was in the original. But she knows, really through kind of unexplained ideas, because how could she know that? But okay.
There is no way.
There is no way she could know that. So I don't understand. But yeah, throughout the film, she's like talking to her guardian, who she calls Pops. And she's like,
Pops. Okay, that's not weird.
Yeah, she's like, I don't know. I know I'm supposed to fall in love with him, but I just don't feel anything. And I'm like, this is dumb. How do you know that? First of all, and second of all, stop. Like, you're gonna fall in love with him. Like, I know how this goes. There's a John Connor in this film, so evidently something happens. But
what if there's no John Connor because she found Jai Courtney insufferable and therefore would not
like
have sex with him? Yeah, like everyone else.
Well, here's what I'll say though. This, and I never thought I would say this. Jai Courtney was not as bad as I thought he would be.
That's just because you set the bar so low, Dustin.
Yeah, that's probably true. But I'll say this: he was better than Sam Worthington was in Terminator Salvation. I mean, I can't. I hate Sam Worthington. I'm sorry, but he's just a waste of whatever he was.
He's the worst thing to happen to Australia since it was a prison colony.
Yeah, pretty much. And he's the worst thing to happen to sci-fi movies since, I don't know, sci-fi movies are pretty good.
Yeah. They've got a pretty clean track record.
Yeah,
The worst thing to happen to sci-fi movies since Ed Wood.
Yeah, I can give
Google
you that.
Ed Wood, everybody. Google Ed Wood.
Yeah. But no, it's here's what I'll say, right? So it's way better than Terminator 3, which was really ridiculously stupid. And it was more like the originals than Terminator Salvation, because Salvation took place entirely, in the future. This takes place primarily in our world.
Right.
So it's more like the originals in that way. I know James Cameron has gone on record saying that this, to him, is the true third film. But I'm just like, and I know he didn't get paid to say that either, but I'm like, but it's so boring, James. Like, I was reading a review.
Why not just say nothing?
Yeah, I was reading a review last night that said that the movie starts with this prologue that could have easily have been lifted and put in front of Terminator 1, and you would have been fine, except for the fact that, or it said, except if James Cameron was a terrible storyteller or something like that. And I completely agree, because it had no context, no stakes at all. Right. It was just weird. And that's sort of the thing with the whole film was, okay, I know two things are going to happen. Y'all are going to defeat Skynet, and Skynet is still going to live because there has to be sequels. And you're clearly setting up for sequels. So, how can this be a good ending? You know what I mean?
I really hate, one of the reasons I don't like when they continue a franchise, after a certain point is, especially when they're clearly going in a new direction. Like, this isn't really... Salvation was like 6 years ago. I guess that is... I mean, that's more of a gap than the Spider-Man films. So, whenever they do that, I really don't like it because that first movie you always know, well, no matter what, to a certain extent how it's going to end, because they're clearly trying to set up a new franchise. I mean, they cast a new Sarah Connor, a new Kyle Reese, a new John Connor. So they're investing a certain amount into what they hope will be a series of films. So when you're watching the first one and you're just sitting there like, all right, well, something's probably not going to happen to you or you or you, maybe not you, and yeah. You know too much. Whereas like certain other standalone movies, like I don't know, like I'll mention The Purge just because you mentioned Max Burkholder earlier in the episode. I'm watching that and I'm like, man, they might all get killed or not. Yeah. I have no idea, and it's tense. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Right? No,
old man Hooper. True. Well, but when you think about the Terminator, the original, it wasn't. There wasn't a sequel planned, so it felt complete. And then when the second one rolled around, I still think the second one was the perfect ending to the franchise because they won. If you look at Terminator 2, not only did they defeat, Miles Dyson's Cyberdyne from creating Skynet, but then they also killed and destroyed all of the cyborg or all of the androids from the future. So Robert Patrick, molten lava. Arnold Schwarzenegger, molten lava. It's done. You won. Skynet is no more. They can't start Skynet because the only reason Skynet started was because it had pieces of Skynet to start researching. Well, you've destroyed the research, destroyed the pieces they were researching, and destroyed any pieces that they could find to research. It's done. You win. So then Terminator 3 comes along, and it's like, oh, yeah, no, it was... What happened was they postponed Judgment Day to 2003. And then And then you're like, oh, well, that's convenient. And then Terminator Salvation comes around, and they're like, oh, no, Judgment Day was in 2003, and now we're in 2029. And then now they're like, nah, Judgment Day was actually 2017.
Oh,
and
my God.
I'm like, y'all, I can't even keep up. So, yeah, I guess that's not a spoiler. The majority of this film takes place in 2017, and it tries to make like a, we're too dependent on our cell phones kind of commentary.
Oh, Jesus.
But it's like, guys, stop. Skynet was originally like a military thing, and now it's essentially an operating system in the vein of,
Apple.
Yeah. And it's like, guys, dang, stop. Like, okay, Skynet, I don't know. It's such an interesting concept, but to me it's done. Like, it's over. And all of this, 3, Salvation, and Genisys, are all, like, what ifs. And they're all kind of stupid what ifs.
Yeah, like the thing about the Terminator franchise is, look, sci-fi is allowed in my book to have a social message because that's what it's really supposed to do more than other films. I don't like it when action movies have something to say because it's like, shut up, just explode some stuff.
Sure.
I don't mind if it's like Taken or one of the Expendables where it's like human trafficking or something or genocide that they're stopping. Like, okay, those are obviously both bad. Good job.
Right.
But sci-fi, it's in terms of the Terminator, the message, this 1984 message is very simple of this technology will consume us once we let ourselves depend on it too much. I get it.
Right.
It's like you said, it's a military thing. Like,
yeah, but that therein lies the problem.
Looking around at people like using an operating system or using like a map app to get somewhere, it's like, this is going to turn to Skynet. It's sort of like any town crier who says, the sky is falling. You just go, shut up.
Well, yeah, but see, here's the problem. It makes so much sense when it's a military application because then they can launch nuclear missiles.
Right.
But if it's an operating system that my 12-year-old niece is using, and then also the military is using it, which is what they said in the film, like, oh, yeah, we also have a military thing. And I'm like, the military is not going to use the same operating system as everybody else. That's stupid.
No.
And, I don't know. It's just dumb.
That's dumb.
And then you have those moments where like Sarah Connor's like walking through a hospital and everybody's on their phones and she's like, wow, in 2017 everybody has one. And it's like, shut up. I know you're from 1984, but shut up. You're not telling me anything I don't know here. And anyway, it's weird. And tonally too, it was all over the place. Like there's a sequence where Sarah Connor, Kyle Reese, and the Terminator Pops all get arrested. And so they're being booked, and they have their like photos taken and all that stuff, their mugshots. And over that, they're playing the Cops theme song, "Bad Boys, Bad Boy, what you gonna do?" And I'm like, what? Where did this come from? Like I was watching a serious movie, and the punchline of that is that Arnold Schwarzenegger, like, stands in front of the camera or whatever for his mugshot, and he tries to smile real big like he's been taught, and it's this really goofy smile, which I'm like, it's not funny. Like, it was funny in Terminator 2, I guess, when John Connor was like, I'm going to teach you how to smile. But now it's like, ugh, I don't know. It's weird. And plus the time travel's all wonky and whatever. But, for me, it just was like I never felt like I was having fun. Like I said, it's not offensively stupid. It's just it doesn't do anything that's fun. It doesn't do anything.
That's the greatest offense of any movie, though. Like not reaching high enough. It might be frustrating, but not quite there. But when a movie's not even entertaining to watch, that's the baseline you have to hit.
Right, especially for an action movie, like, show me some really cool stuff, and like, you've got Arnold back, and, you've got a bunch of cool abilities to do really cool action, but, they don't really do anything that's really all that phenomenal. I mean, think about how cool it was. I mean, this is so simple, but think about how cool it was in Terminator 2 whenever Arnold would, cock his shotgun by spinning it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and everybody remembers that. They're like, oh, snap, yeah. And that was so simple. There's nothing in that. There's nothing in this movie that I'm like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And
or like when someone,
weird.
in a movie uses a butterfly knife, it's like, oh, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah,
That actor must have practiced that, for a while.
Right. There's just a bunch of like vis effects stuff. Like there's a scene where Sarah Connor's driving a school bus, and the school bus is on the Golden Gate Bridge, and it knocks over like one of the sides, and then Arnold has to like hold the school bus and hold her, and she has to hold Jack Courtney as Arnold lets go of the school bus, and it like falls down around them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that I saw that in The Lost World,
right?
So I'm not. Like, I guess that's the thing, is that the movie doesn't do anything where I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I'll remember that in 15 years.
Yeah. So it completely forgettable, schlocky.
Yeah. Like I said, it's not offensively boring. I mean, offensively stupid, but it's also not memorable. And that to me is worse.
That
like,
is worse.
I'd almost rather it be so stupid that I can look back on it and go, man, that was stupid. You remember when he did that? Rather than be like, did you see Terminator Genisys? Yeah, but I don't remember anything about it.
Ugh.
And that to me is sort of the worst of the two. Also, I'm just getting sick of seeing another John Connor in every freaking movie. Like, just
me
pick
too,
a
because
dude.
my name is John Connor. How do you think I feel? Like,
I know, right? Like, I don't know. Like, obviously, Edward Furlong has his issues, so you can't keep going with him. And he was a kid, and if you're going to jump forward, it makes sense, I guess, to cast somebody else. But like, there's literally never been 2 movies in a row with the same John Connor.
See, I have not seen this film, but I can tell you that Jason Clarke is not the person I would have picked to be John Connor. Like, pick somebody who looks like they've actually fought in multiple battles.
Yeah.
Like, you can basically, like, when you're thinking about casting, you essentially need to cast whoever you would cast to be in, like, a Gears of War movie or something. Like, or whatever that is, or whatever, is it Gears of War with the Marcus Phoenix? Yeah. Like, get some gravelly, world-weary looking dude who's like 43 to be him. Right. Not, Aussie boy, Jason Clarke who's having trouble spitting out lines in an American accent. Like, why can't anyone get this shit right? See, I don't like Jason Statham, but almost get like a Statham kind of a guy. I'd rather them pick Connor. Statham and just have him be British. Like, forget the continuity errors. Like, maybe I'll let that one go. But at least he's believable as a guy who can do action. Yeah. At this point, I would just rather them cut ties from the continuity completely. And just like do something different and new. And rather than, because this, believe it or not, can still fit in the continuity of all the other movies. And I mean, it takes a little finagling, I guess, and a lot of thought that maybe the screenwriters didn't even put into it. But it's like, you could do it. But, it's just, I'm tired of seeing the same stuff. Like, okay, we got to protect Sarah Connor, or we got to protect John Connor. Okay, we're in the past. And the cool thing about it was, like, when you think about the original, it was like a last case scenario, sending somebody back. But if they're sending somebody back all the time, then, and they're always getting better, it's like, well, why didn't, instead of just sending the T-800 back to 1984 to kill Sarah Connor, and then it failed, why didn't they just keep sending people back to that same exact moment in time? Why did they keep, like, doing different things? Send 2 of them back at once. Send 10 of them. Well, and even then, like, in this film, it has on, like, a rack, like, dozens of Arnold Schwarzeneggers. And it picks one and sends them back. I'm like, or send all 100 of them. Send all of them, yeah. To just make sure. Like, I guess that's a little less conspicuous, but there's only 3 Sarah Connors in the phone book in that first movie. So if you send 100, just send you'll get 33 of them to every house. Right. Well, but here's the thing too. I mean, it also made sense too that Skynet would send one back, because, and it's like a last ditch effort, because
Skynet also doesn't know the ramifications of sending a machine back. Like, if we send one back, we could mess everything up. So we're going to send one. We're not going to send 100, where, like, in 1984, everyone starts seeing 100 of the same person around one house. It's going to raise a lot of eyes, and then the whole timeline changes. So it made sense. But now, after 5 movies, it's like, y'all are sending so many things back to the past. And there was, like, the TV show, the Sarah Connor Chronicles. Also, a Game of Thrones person played Sarah Connor. And it's like... So, like, in every episode, Skynet had sent somebody back. And I'm like, how many people are y'all sending back? And do you realize that you're seriously messing up the time stream and making the whole time travel thing really weird to me? I don't know. Like I said, I just think Terminator ended with 2, and all of this other stuff is just, like, fan fiction.
The problem with our society and... but more specifically in movies, everyone gets their shot at everything, no matter what their qualifications are. So everyone wants to be involved with. They want to be able. They all sit down. They tell the same story, and it's all like, "Oh, I've idolized Mr. Cameron. I love Terminator growing up. I can't wait. I'm so excited to be part of continuing the franchise." And it's like, Dustin, you yourself said, like, if you would turn down directing a Superman movie if the script they had for it was terrible.
Yeah, I would.
Like, you're a fan, because you're a fan, you don't want to poison the well.
Yeah. I mean, although, to be fair, Hooper, it's very easy to say that on principle and then be offered, like, $1 million paycheck and be
absolutely.
Or a multi-million-dollar paycheck and be like, work for 8 months and, make a bad Superman movie. But at the same time, like, on principle, I feel pretty confident in saying, if I was going to do a Superman movie, I would not want it to be a bad one. Like, I wouldn't want that to be my contribution to the legacy of that character.
Yeah.
And the same with Terminator. I mean, I love those first 2 movies. And I probably like the first one a little better because I just love the simplicity of a waitress becoming a hero. And a waitress being like her whole life being turned upside down at the blink of an eye. Long story short, the Terminator Genisys is not only, like, the hardest of all the movies to type into Google because Genesis is spelled so stupidly.
Oh, God. How many babies do you think next year are going to be named Genesis, spelled like that?
Probably way
Genesis
more than
Rodriguez, Genesis Jones.
Yeah, exactly. I guess here's what I'll say, right? If you're not a fan of the franchise, don't waste your time because this movie isn't, like, an entertaining summer blockbuster. Mm-hmm. If you are a fan of the franchise, see it as a matinee or wait for the red box because it's not worth full price. And you will probably walk away feeling like that was it. Like, that was the next Terminator movie. Mm-hmm. I don't even like. I saw it yesterday, and I have a hard time remembering the fact that I saw it. Like, I'm not still riding, like, the high of, like, yeah, new Terminator, yeah. So it's just weirdly forgettable. But if you're a fan, it is nice to see Arnold back as the T-800. He's kind of born for that role. Just don't look for anything else, like, filmmaking wise to, like, blow you away because, like I said, the actors, they're not given much to work with, but even still, they're kind of boring and miscast. Wait for the red box unless you're a fan of Terminator.
That's going to be it for this episode. Tune in next week. We'll talk about a couple other movies we saw, maybe some more TV, maybe not, and possibly some film news. I could have just said none of that. Anyway, this weekend...
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say Minions comes out, so maybe people will be getting out and seeing that. They might be seeing Boulevard, which is, I guess, is Robin Williams' last movie. I don't know. There's not much out really besides Minions that is of note. There's a movie called Selfless that's another body swap movie, I think, or something like it with Ryan Reynolds. Mm-hmm. Wait, yeah, Ryan Reynolds, and Ben Kingsley.
Just for the sake of you guys, if you're deciding on what to see this weekend, Minions is currently riding at a 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, and Selfless is at a 30%. So,
yeah.
Boulevard is at a 50%, and that should kind of tell you everything you need to know.
You could also try and go see Do I Sound Gay?
Yes, which
in limited release.
Appears to be probably a decent movie. It's got an 83.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Actually, this seems pretty cool. Actually,
there's
speaking of
also
George Takei in the film,
yeah, there's also a film coming out in limited release called Tangerine, and I'll talk about this just briefly. Tangerine is probably not a movie that many people would like to see in theaters, and really even on Redbox. I mean, it's one of those like out there kind of indie movies. But to me, it's interesting because the whole thing was shot on an iPhone.
Wow.
It's a feature-length film and probably the first shot on a mobile device. So the description on Rotten Tomatoes is a working girl tears through Tinseltown on Christmas Eve searching for the pimp who broke her heart. It has an 88, but I think people may just be looking at that like technically and saying like, "Oh, so good." The novelty of it. The if you watch the trailer, it doesn't really do anything to sell the movie to me. So anyway, Tangerine, yeah, that's also a thing. Bye, everybody.
We'll be back.
I'll be back.
Do
you know he does say I'll be back. He does not say come with me if you want to live.
No.
Sarah Connor does,
yes.
And nobody says hasta la vista, baby, which I thought was weird.
Well,
I figured somebody would.
No. I would have offed myself if that had happened.
Well, yeah, this is true.
Alrighty.
Bye.
Have a good weekend, everybody.